Sri Ramayanam. It has been the cultural backbone of Bharat since thousands of years and will continue to be till the end of time. Just like how Bharata devoted his entire life to his brother Sri Rama, Bharat since thousands of years have been piously devoted to Sri Rama. Sri Ramayanam has profound impact on the people of India and it has shaped up the ethical framework of the society. If you are following this channel, Project SHIVOHAM, we have been researching on Sri Ramayanam and bringing forward short documentaries about this great epic. And this documentary about Sri Ramayanam is from the hidden pages of the history, a completely unknown chapter in the life of Bhagavan Sri Ram, which most of us would have never probably heard of ever before. Getting straight to the point, Bhagavan Sri Ram is worshipped not because that he is a god, but because he was a man. I repeat my statement. Bhagavan Sri Ram is not worshipped because that he is a god with magics and miracles. Rather, he is worshipped because he lived a common life like a normal human being, playing different roles in his entire life, leading by an example as to how a human being needs to be while he or she plays different roles in his or her own life. Bhagavan Sri Ram played a very inspirational role, a loving husband. And I know what you're thinking, please hold your thoughts until the end of this documentary. We'll talk about it. He played an adorable brother who loved his younger brother Bharata just like his own son. He played a reliable friend to Sugriva and helped him regain his kingdom. Sri Rama has been revered as a very deadly warrior, and if one reads Sri Ramayanam, his valor is well described over there. A caring master, Sri Rama has been the beating heart of Hanuman. Throughout their relationship, how Lord Hanuman devoted his entire life to Bhagavan Sri Ram. Same way, Sri Rama as well held Lord Hanuman very dear throughout his life. Lastly and very important of all, Sri Ram has been a servant king, a servant to the people of his kingdom and served them throughout and up until his end of life. All these are the characters of Sri Rama as described in Sri Ramayana. But one role which is never talked much about, rather we have very little description in Sri Ramayana, is he is also a devout student, a very dedicated young learner, and this is the foundation for all these great characters. Let's take a very commonsensical standpoint. When Sita Devi was abducted, an easy solution is to find another wife, but he did not do that. He chose to go searching for her. When Bharata offered the entire kingdom at the feet of Bhagavan Sri Ram to come and reclaim his throne, he did not do that. Rather, he chose to stand for his word and completed 14 years of exile. Again, an easy solution is not taken, rather a right one was chosen. As a reliable friend, he could have made pact with Vali, who's commanding thousands of the Vanarasena, but still he chose to make a pact with Sugriva because he is on the side of the right. Now, this is very important thing which we often tend to forget. If Bhagavan Sri Ram had made a pact with Vali instead of Sugriva, 50% of Sri Ramayanam would have never happened. He would have got back Sita Devi in a very easy manner with the help of Vali. But still, he chose to stand on what is right. Now, all these pivotal points in a person's life, when you are pushed with your back against your wall, that's when people's real character comes out. And a simple question here is, what made Bhagavan Sri Ram to stand always on the side of dharma and not go for easy solutions which are not on the side of right? It is only because of his student life, what he learned from his gurus. That dictated his entire life. And what we're going to see now is this missing chapter, the student life of Bhagavan Sri Ram, the foundation for the entire Sri Ramayana, but is not described in Sri Ramayana. Then where is it described? That's what we're going to see now. Väsishta Maharshi and Viswamitra Maharshi, the gurus of Sri Rama, who shaped up the boyhood and eventually the life of Bhagavan Sri Ram. Now, I go with the assumption that you have a high-level view about the storyline of Sri Ramayana. At the age of 16, Sri Ram and Lakshman follows Viswamitra into the forest to protect the yajna, and that's when Viswamitra Maharshi teaches both Sri Rama and Lakshmana on war techniques and various other shastras. Now this is the student life that is described in Sri Ramayana, and it starts at the age of 15 to 16 when he was of that age. But what happened before that? What did Vaasishtam Maharshi teach Bhagavan Sri Ram? Because it is also described that Vaasishtam Maharshi was also the guru of Bhagavan Sri Ram, but very little is mentioned about the relationship between Vasishta Maharshi and Bhagavan Sri Ram in Sri Ramayana. But what did Vasishta Maharshi teach Bhagavan Sri Ram? That's our question. Now finally, here is the untold chapter of Bhagavan Sri Ram's life. The same Valmiki Maharshi who wrote the entire Sri Ramayana also wrote a completely different book with the name Yoga Vasishtam. This book explains in detail about the conversations that happened between Vasishta Maharshi and Bhagavan Sri Ram during his early childhood days when he was a boy. The complete teachings of Vasishta Maharshi towards Bhagavan Sri Ram and his brothers is extensively documented in Yoga Vasishtam. Now let us see what is in Yoga Vasishtam and what are the details in this hidden pages of the history about Bhagavan Sri Ram's childhood. Firstly, let us try to understand the timeline of Yoga Vasishtam in parallels with Sri Ramayana, and eventually we will get to the contents of it. Now, Yoga Vasishtam and Sri Ramayana are one and the same story. It's just that it is documented in two different books. In Sri Ramayana, Balakanda 18th chapter or 18th Sarga, that is where the birth of Bhagavan Sri Ram is detailed out. And in a very surprising manner, right from the birth up until he grows up to a teenager of 15-16 years young kid, everything is detailed in a very abridged manner. You will not find much of the details over there in the 18th Sarga about the childhood of Bhagavan Sri Ram and his brothers. Now Yoga Vasishtam in timeline is parallel to this 18th Sarga. So when this particular Sarga was happening, that is just before the Sarga happened, or rather in between the Sarga's timeline, that is exactly when Yoga Vasishtam also occurred. And with 32,000 slokas spread across 6 chapters, Yoga Vasishtam is an unbelievably huge book, explaining only the teachings of Vasishta Maharshi towards Bhagavan Sri Ram. And Yoga Vasishtam is a treasure trove of knowledge. Now let's see the contents of it. Coming to the contents of Sri Ramayana, we all know that it has 6 chapters: Balakanda, Ayodhyakanda, Aranyakanda, Kishkindakanda, Sundarakanda and Yuddhakanda. Approximately 24,000 slokas. Valmiki Maharshi wrote Yoga Vasishtam also in 6 chapters: Vairagya Prakarana, Mumuksha Prakarana, Utpatti Prakarana, Sthiti Prakarana, Upasama Prakarana and Nirvana Prakarana. We'll see what the contents of each of these chapters are. But it has 32,000 slokas in 6 chapters, making it larger than Sri Ramayana. Yoga Vasishtam is also well known with the name Maha Ramayanam, which says a bigger Ramayana or a bigger version of Ramayana. So basically this word Ramayana means the journey of Sri Rama. The literal word Ramayana means the journey of Sri Rama. Now if you zoomed into the journey of Sri Rama as a boy, then it is Yoga Vasishtam, which is Maha Ramayanam. And if you take the complete life history, then it is Sri Ramayana. Both are written by the same Valmiki Maharshi. This is very important to note. What I came to know is a couple of generations earlier from now, like 3 to 4 generations before us, maybe 100 years or before, slightly before that, Yoga Vasishtam was well in the public sphere. But from last 100-150 years or so, slowly we have been losing Yoga Vasishtam from the public sphere, and currently it is limited only to few people who are having scholarly or devotional interest in the subject. Anyways, let's move on. Let's get to the contents of Yoga Vasishtam, what is described in these 6 chapters. The first chapter is Vairagya Prakaranam. Here, Yoga Vasishtam starts with a prologue of Sri Ramayana. So basically, it talks about the boyhood of Sri Rama. I will try to narrate what is written in Yoga Vasishtam about Sri Ramayana, because it is clearly referring Sri Ramayana phases, and this is how it goes. Once Sri Rama grows up to a boy of like 12 to 13 years of age, he sets out on a pilgrimage with his brothers Lakshmana and Shatrughna. Bharata is not accompanied by them because he used to stay mostly in his maternal uncle's home. So it's Rama, Lakshmana and Shatrughna. All 3 of them goes out on a pilgrimage or a kind of a tour across their kingdom. This is a very interesting narration that Yoga Vasishtam starts with. All the places that Sri Rama and his brothers visited are well described, and lots of names of the rivers, places and dynasties of kings that he has come across. So a lot of interesting details are documented in the very beginning of Yoga Vasishtam. So cutting the long story short, so Rama along with his brothers goes on a kind of a tour and experiences different places and returns to Ayodhya, surprisingly in a very depressed state of mind. More or less like how Gautam Buddha or Arjuna feel a bit depressed or dejected during the pivotal phases of their lives. That is exactly how the state of mind of Sri Rama as a boy of 15 years age was. He gets more into the spiritual angle, trying to understand the purpose of life and all that stuff. That is when Vasishta Maharshi starts teaching different aspects about human life. Now in this first chapter, broadly these are the contents that are covered. The prologue of Sri Ramayanam, the details of the pilgrimage of Sri Rama along with his brothers, the depression of Sri Rama, and a discourse on detachment. So it starts with that note, the first chapter, Vairagya Prakaranam, a conversation between Bhagavan Sri Rama and Vasishta Maharshi. And the second chapter is Mumuksha Prakarana. Here it talks about the desire of mukti, the liberation, illustration of human mindset, understanding what is happiness, what is real happiness, and the contentment, purpose of Yoga Vasishtam, what is that he is about to teach him, and a lot more. And the third chapter is Utpatti Prakarana. The word Utpatti means genesis or creation in that connotation. From this chapter onwards, it's going to be very interesting how the origin of the nature and universe has begun, how the diversity of evolution has happened, how the states of evolution of human mind happened as a result of the evolution of the universe, the 7 stages of ignorance and the 7 stages of true knowledge. So it's basically talking about the genesis of this beautiful creation called as the human mind. Here I'll just quote very interesting observation that I understood. Here Vasishta Maharshi teaches Bhagavan Sri Ram about time and space. Here is what he says. Time and space are only ideas of mind. Through the mind's perception, many thousands of years may pass as a moment or vice versa. Very interesting revelations about this concept of space, time and how it interplays with the human mind are very well detailed in this chapter. And there comes chapter number 4. It is called as Sthiti Prakaranam. Here Vasishta Maharshi explains about the ego in humans. It's a very important part of human life. People have that in negative connotation. It is true, but at the same time, understanding and taming this monster called as ego is very important for a peaceful and happy life. And in this chapter, that's exactly what Vasishta Maharshi details out. Illustration of mankind's position in the universe, human psychology and its oscillations, the paradoxes and different states of mind, oscillating between pain and pleasure, and many such concepts. And in the 5th chapter, called as Upasamana Prakarana, here Vasishta Maharshi explains about understanding the Atman, or the self, self-introspection, self-realization, how to attain a steady state of mind, and how to have a universal detachment, just performing your duties and devoid of any of its effects on you. Last and the 6th chapter, Nirvana Prakarana. Here Vasishta Maharshi explains about understanding the Brahman, the ultimate reality or the supreme reality of this entire nature and cosmos. Preachings of Lord Shiva, what Lord Shiva taught to Parvati Devi about the universe and its creation and destruction, all these concepts, and illustration of Shiva and Kali and the ultimate liberation, which is called as the Nirvana. All these concepts are explained in the 6th chapter of Yoga Vasishtam. All in all, if we really have to sum up Yoga Vasishtam, it details out the Advaitha philosophy at great length. Now, I'm not an enlightened human being to talk about Advaitha philosophy, so let's keep it very short and simple. It all says that Advaitha, in simple words, it says that pain and pleasure are the transient illusions of human mind and the ultimate reality is only Brahman. And in simple words, what it means is, say for instance, you're feeling hungry. Your state of hunger versus the state of hunger of a street dog versus the state of hunger of the Prime Minister of a country. All these 3 states of hunger of a person or a stray dog or the Prime Minister of a country is one and the same, because Advaita philosophy says that there is only one reality, which is Brahman, which got manifested in different forms and shapes in this nature and cosmos. That's in simple words what Advaita philosophy is. And Yoga Vasishtam is an extensive elaboration of Advaita philosophy. Unbelievably extensive elaboration of Advaita philosophy. That's what Vasishta Maharshi taught Bhagavan Sri Rama, which eventually shaped up his entire life. Now let me share my own experience in briefly going through Yoga Vasishtam. I was left speechless And honestly, I don't even know how to articulate what I'm about to say. But let me give it a try. Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in Yoga Vasishtam at great detail. Not just the essence of it, but a complete prediction of Maha Bharat is detailed out at great length in Yoga Vasishtam, which is also called as Maha Ramayanam, as I said. Let me read this out and then I'll explain the context. Vasudeva sutastveko Vasudeva iti srutaha deho bhavishyati hare dvitiya pandavo arjunaha. This slokam is from Yoga Vasishtam, Nirvana Prakarana, 52nd chapter, 28th slokam. And here is the translation. In future, Sri Mahavishnu will take two incarnations. One as Vasudeva, son of Vasudev, and the other one is Arjuna as son of Pandu Maharaja. And now let us get to the context and background of it. At the end, like I said, this is the Nirvana Prakarana, is the 6th chapter, right? It's the fag end of Yoga Vasishtam. That is when, after explaining everything, Vasishta Maharshi says to Bhagavan Sri Rama that, Rama, in future, there will be another person called as Arjuna who will be in an exact state of dejection and depression like you are when we started before this class. And then Vasudeva or Bhagavan Sri Krishna will narrate the essence of whatever that I narrated to you towards Arjuna and dispels the ignorance of Arjuna. And he doesn't stop over there. He continues to narrate the entire Mahabharatam in a very abridged manner, and to extreme surprise, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is detailed out in 4 chapters. 4 chapters, right from 52nd chapter of Nirvana Prakarana up until 58th chapter, in approximately 100-150 slokas. Vasishta Maharshi predicts, or rather foretells, what Bhagavan Sri Krishna will teach Arjuna down the line thousands of years later. And this is the first time that I learned the fact that Sri Ramayanam quotes Mahabharatam, which is yet to happen. Let's see a couple of these slokas coming our way now. Yudhishthira iti khyate dharmaputro bhavishyati, and it goes on. He says that in future, the same Pandu Maharaja will have an elder son named Yudhishthira, who will be an embodiment of Dharma and will rule this earth. Vasishta Maharshi predicts the birth of Yudhishthira to Pandu Maharaja and explains that he is going to rule the earth in future and is an embodiment of Dharma himself. Duryodhana iti khyātastasya bhrātā pitruvyajah bhavishyati dhridadvandvo bhīmo bhabruhareriva. Vasishta Maharshi says that in future Yudhishthira will have a brother with the name Duryodhana and they will fight a deadly war. So all these slokas are the introduction to get to the point where Bhagavad Gita is narrated by Sri Krishna to Arjuna. Basically, Vasishta Maharshi is foretelling what that Sri Krishna will be narrating to Arjuna, who will also be in the same position as Sri Rama currently is. That is the reason we are having these introductions in a foretelling mode. So going on like this, from chapters 52 to 58, in all these chapters, Bhagavad Gita is narrated by Vasishta Maharshi to Sri Rama, foretelling what Krishna would narrate to Arjuna in future. The essence of Bhagavad Gita is a highly condensed version of Yoga Vasishtam. The root of Bhagavad Gita lies in Yoga Vasishtam, and both Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Vasishtam talk about one philosophy that is called as Advaitha philosophy, the same philosophy that was brought by Sri Adi Shankaracharya for the entire humanity to understand this part of philosophy, which inherently has compassion, universal brotherhood. These are very basic elements. The idea of universal brotherhood is nothing. When you look at Advaita philosophy, when it says that there is absolutely no difference between a stray dog and myself, then absolutely and very inherently there is no difference between a person of one religion and a person from another religion. So this very concept of universal brotherhood and all are very elementary things when you look at Advaita philosophy, which talks about much larger perspective. Anyways, coming back, Bhagavad Gita is also called as Advaita Amrita Varshini, which means it is the corpus of Advaita philosophy. And the 700 slokas Bhagavad Gita is very well known across the world, but the 32,000 verses of Yoga Vasishtam unfortunately is not well known to the world. And this is my small attempt to bring forward the awareness about Yoga Vasishtam. rolling all the way back where we started. The different roles, rather the role models that Bhagavan Sri Rama has demonstrated in Sri Ramayanam. This is a beautiful building, but the foundation of this beautiful building is he being a devout student of both Vishwamitra Maharshi and Väsishta Maharshi, well detailed out in Yoga Vasishtam, where he learned the ethics, morals and values and purpose of human life as part of Yoga Vasishtam. That is what carved out Bhagavan Sri Rama to be a very inspirational human being. Again, I repeat my words. We worship Bhagavan Sri Rama not because that he is a god, but because he was a man. He lived as a man, susceptible to different kinds of emotions, who stood rock steady in disastrous situations during his life. And that is the reason why we worship Bhagavan Sri Rama. And when I am talking about Bhagavan Sri Rama, inherently I am also talking about Sita Devi. They are not two different human beings, they are one and the same. Whatever the qualities of Bhagavan Sri Ram that I am putting forward here are exactly applicable to Sita Devi as well. She has been resilient, she followed her husband, she stood rock steady even though she was abducted, not knowing when she would be killed. So all these qualities, they are not two different people. Bhagavan Sri Ram and Sita Devi are just one and the same. And that is the reason we worship both of them, an ideal man and an ideal woman. Forget about the entire Sri Ramayana. This just one line is sufficient to understand the character of Bhagavan Sri Ram. These words are said by Maricha, a Rakshasa who tried to destroy the yajna of Vishwamitra Maharshi and was attacked by Bhagavan Sri Rama. After taking the arrowheads coming in from Bhagavan Sri Rama, Maricha somehow manages to survive and eventually realizes, and these are the words, rather the last words of Maricha to Ravana about Sri Rama. Ramo Vigrahavam Dharmaha Sadhu Satya Parakramaha Raja Sarvasya Lokasya Devanam Maghavaniva, which means that Rama is a manifestation of Dharma itself. And this is unprecedented. An enemy who tormented Sri Ram for the rest of his life still comes forward and says that yes, Sri Rama is a Dharma personified. I think these are the best lines that explains about the character of Bhagavan Sri Ram as a whole. The reason I am harping this again and again is, unfortunately, Bhagavan Sri Ram, Sri Ramayanam or the Ram Mandir, all these concepts are entangled in a nonsensical political debates. For or against doesn't matter. I'm not saying that everybody who opposes the concept of Sri Ramayanam or Rama are bad, or whoever blindly says Jai Sri Ram is good. No, that is absolute nonsense. The fact of the matter here is, it doesn't matter whether you believe in Sri Ramayanam or not, but Sri Ramayanam has been the backbone, and it will continue to be the backbone of the culture of India, teaching how the ethics, values and morals of a person, man or woman, has to be throughout their life. And whoever follows it are revering Sri Ramayana. Doesn't matter if you say Jai Sri Ram or not. Doesn't matter if you belong to Sanatana Dharma or not. As long as you could pick up the values, ethics and morals from this great epic, and you can make your life better and as well make the lives of the people around you better. That's the whole purpose of Sri Ramayana. Now that is the story about the untold chapter in the life history of Bhagavan Sri Rama, Yoga Vasishtam, an incredible book, and let's hope that it gains its previous glory. Coming to the important question which I skipped in the very beginning of the video, a loving husband, and the very first thing that comes to people's talk is Sita Parityaga. Why did he left her on her own, a pregnant woman, into the jungle? Answers to all these questions with a detailed analysis will be coming up in our next documentary, where we are analyzing the entire Uttara Ramayana. Is it Prakshipt or is it not Prakshipt? How far of Uttara Ramayanam is true and how much of it is Prakshipt? A very detailed analysis, probably a never before kind of an analysis is coming, and we are busy working on it, and we'll explain that in our next videos. Jai Sri Ram, and as always, thanks for watching.